Have you ever noticed that the voice inside your mind never truly goes silent? It comments on your mistakes, predicts your future, judges your every decision, and quietly shapes the person you become. Most people believe that their biggest enemy is someone outside of them, but the truth is far more unsettling. The most powerful influence in your life is the conversation you have with yourself every single day. For just 3 days, change that conversation, and something unexpected begins to happen. Your anxiety loses its grip. Your confidence starts returning. Situations that once controlled your emotions suddenly seem smaller. This isn't because the world has changed. It's because the person interpreting the world has changed. Ancient wisdom has long taught that peace is not found by controlling life, but by mastering the mind that experiences it. The words you repeatedly whisper to yourself become commands that your subconscious obeys. Every thought either strengthens your inner foundation or slowly tears it apart. Today, you'll discover a simple but deeply transformative practice inspired by timeless Shaolin wisdom. If you genuinely practice these mental conversations for only 3 days, you may notice something remarkable. The world begins responding differently because you begin responding differently. Let's begin. Most people believe their life is shaped by circumstances, other people, or luck. But there is a force working long before any of those influences take effect. It speaks in your own voice. It follows you everywhere, from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep. It comments on every success, every mistake, every possibility, and every fear. The strange part is that most people never question it. They assume that because the voice sounds like them, it must be telling the truth. Yet the mind does not automatically distinguish between truth and repetition. It simply accepts what it hears most often. Think about how many times you silently say, "I'm not good enough, I always mess things up," or "nothing ever works out for me." These sentences may seem harmless because no one else hears them, but your subconscious does. It records them like instructions rather than opinions. Over time, those repeated messages become beliefs, and beliefs quietly shape behavior. You begin hesitating before taking opportunities, avoiding challenges, and expecting disappointment before anything has even happened. The world has not limited you. Your own internal dialogue has. The greatest deception of negative self-talk is that it disguises itself as realism. It tells you that it is only preparing you for failure so you won't be disappointed. It convinces you that criticizing yourself is the same as improving yourself. But constant criticism never creates excellence. It creates tension. A mind trapped in tension cannot think clearly. It becomes reactive instead of responsive. It sees danger where there is none and interprets small setbacks as permanent defeats. Observe someone who appears calm under pressure. Their life is not necessarily easier. They simply refuse to let their inner voice become their enemy. When difficulty arrives, they do not say, "I can't handle this." Instead, they quietly remind themselves, "This is difficult, but I will respond one step at a time." That single difference changes everything. One sentence feeds fear. The other feeds stability. Ancient wisdom teaches that before you attempt to control your surroundings, you must first become aware of the conversation happening within. If your mind constantly speaks the language of defeat, no external success will ever feel secure. Even after achieving something meaningful, you will immediately begin searching for reasons why it won't last. This is why many people accomplish their goals, yet remain deeply dissatisfied. They changed their circumstances, but never changed the narrator inside their mind. For the next 3 days, become an observer of your own thoughts. Do not fight every negative idea that appears. Fighting often gives it more power. Instead, notice it without judgment. When your mind says, "I'm going to fail," pause for a moment and simply ask, "Is this a fact, or is this only a familiar habit speaking?" That simple question creates distance between you and the thought. Once there is distance, there is choice. Remember, you are not every thought that enters your mind. Thoughts come and go like clouds crossing the sky. What determines your future is not the thoughts that appear automatically, but the ones you repeatedly accept and repeat. Every calm sentence you choose becomes a new instruction for your subconscious. Every encouraging word weakens an old pattern of fear. Little by little, the voice inside you begins to change. And when that voice changes, your perception changes. When your perception changes, your actions change. And when your actions change consistently, your entire reality begins to follow. One of the greatest sources of inner suffering is not failure itself, but the habit of turning every failure into a personal identity. There is a profound difference between saying, "I made a mistake," and saying, "I am a mistake." The first statement describes a moment. The second defines an entire life. Yet most people do this without even realizing it. A single awkward conversation becomes proof that they are socially incapable. One missed opportunity becomes evidence that they are destined to fail. One difficult day becomes confirmation that happiness is beyond their reach. The mind has a tendency to exaggerate temporary experiences into permanent conclusions. And this habit slowly erodes inner peace. For the next 3 days, practice replacing judgment with observation. Instead of immediately labeling yourself after every event, simply notice what happened. Imagine you are watching your own thoughts from a short distance. When frustration arises, do not rush to declare yourself weak. Instead, quietly say, "I notice that frustration is present." When anxiety appears, avoid saying, "I am anxious." Say, "Anxiety is visiting me right now." This subtle shift may seem insignificant, but it changes everything. The emotion is no longer your identity. It is simply an experience passing through your awareness. Think about the sky during a storm. Dark clouds may cover it for hours, but the sky itself remains untouched. The clouds come and go, yet the vastness behind them never disappears. Your mind works in much the same way. Thoughts, emotions, and reactions are like changing weather. They arrive unexpectedly, sometimes with great intensity, but they are not the entirety of who you are. The mistake most people make is believing they are the storm instead of the sky that holds it. Once you recognize this difference, emotional turbulence begins to lose its power over you. Judgment always narrows your perspective. Observation expands it. When you judge yourself, your mind searches for evidence that supports the judgment. If you call yourself incapable, you begin noticing every mistake while ignoring every success. Your attention becomes biased toward confirming your fears. But when you observe without labeling, curiosity replaces condemnation. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you begin asking, "What can this experience teach me?" One question keeps you trapped in shame. The other opens the door to growth. Patience with yourself is not weakness, it is discipline. Anyone can criticize themselves after making an error. It takes real strength to respond with calm honesty. Imagine speaking to a close friend who is struggling. You would probably encourage them, remind them that setbacks are temporary, and help them see the bigger picture. Yet when the same situation happens to you, your inner voice often becomes harsh and unforgiving. Why should the person who spends every moment of life with you receive the least compassion? This does not mean ignoring responsibility or pretending everything is fine. Calm observation is not denial. It is seeing reality clearly without adding unnecessary suffering. If you made a poor decision, acknowledge it. Learn from it. Correct it. But do not build your identity around it. Every experience contains information, not a final verdict about your worth. For these 3 days, each time you catch yourself using words like always, never, or I am, pause immediately. Replace them with statements that describe the present moment rather than define your character. Instead of saying, "I always fail," try, "This attempt didn't go as planned." Instead of, "I'm not strong enough," say, "I am still developing strength." These are not empty affirmations meant to hide reality. They are accurate descriptions that leave room for growth. Over time, this practice reshapes the relationship you have with your own mind. You stop becoming a harsh judge and begin acting as a steady guide. Fear no longer has the final word because you no longer accept every thought as absolute truth. You respond instead of react. You reflect instead of condemn. And as this habit grows stronger, you discover that inner peace is not created by having perfect thoughts, but by refusing to let imperfect thoughts define who you are. The person you become is influenced not only by what you do each day, but by the way you speak to yourself before you take action. Every meaningful achievement begins as an internal conversation long before it becomes an external result. If your mind constantly repeats, "I don't think I can do this," your body responds with hesitation. Your decisions become smaller, your confidence fades, and you begin avoiding situations that could help you grow. But when your inner voice calmly says, I may not have all the answers yet, but I can take the next step, something shifts. You stop waiting for certainty and begin moving with quiet determination. Many people believe confidence comes after success. They think that once they achieve enough, they will finally feel strong. Yet true confidence rarely works that way. It is built before the outcome arrives. It grows through the words you consistently choose when no one else is listening. Every time you encourage yourself instead of insulting yourself, you strengthen a part of your mind that becomes more reliable under pressure. You are teaching yourself that regardless of what happens outside, there is always one voice you can trust inside. Imagine the version of yourself you deeply admire. This person is not perfect. They still experience fear, disappointment, and uncertainty. The difference is in how they respond. When obstacles appear, they do not immediately question their worth. They ask, what is the next right action? They do not waste energy arguing with reality or complaining about circumstances beyond their control. Their inner dialogue is focused on progress rather than panic. This is the language you must begin practicing. Not because you are pretending to be someone else, but because you are strengthening qualities that already exist within you. For the next 3 days, become intentional about every sentence you repeat in your mind. Whenever you catch yourself saying, this is impossible, replace it with, this is difficult, but I can learn. Instead of, I'm not ready, say, I am preparing myself with every step I take. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what if I become stronger through this experience? These changes may seem small, yet they redirect the entire focus of your mind. One way of speaking traps you in imagined outcomes. The other keeps your attention on actions you can take right now. Notice that truly strong people rarely need dramatic declarations. They do not constantly tell themselves they are invincible or superior to others. Their confidence is quiet. It sounds like patience. It sounds like discipline. It sounds like keep going. It sounds like one more step. This kind of self-talk is powerful because it is believable. Your subconscious responds best to calm certainty, not exaggerated promises. You do not need to convince yourself that life will always be easy. You only need to remind yourself that you are capable of meeting whatever comes with clarity and persistence. There is another habit that quietly weakens the mind, constantly comparing yourself to others. The moment your inner dialogue becomes centered on someone else's journey, you lose connection with your own. You begin measuring your progress against lives you only partially understand. Instead, speak to yourself as someone committed to steady improvement. Tell yourself, my responsibility is not to be ahead of everyone else. My responsibility is to become slightly better than I was yesterday. This simple perspective removes unnecessary pressure and replaces it with purpose. Your mind also learns through repetition. One encouraging sentence spoken once has little effect if it is followed by 100 thoughts of doubt. This is why consistency matters far more than intensity. You do not need a burst of motivation that lasts one morning. You need a practice that quietly continues every day. Each time you choose words that reflect patience, courage, and responsibility, you reinforce a new mental pattern. At first, it may feel unnatural because your old habits are deeply familiar. But familiarity is not truth. It is simply repetition. What has been repeated can be replaced. By the end of these 3 days, you may notice that challenges have not disappeared, yet your relationship with them has changed. Situations that once felt overwhelming now seem manageable. Decisions that once filled you with fear become opportunities to grow. This transformation does not happen because the world suddenly becomes kinder. It happens because the voice guiding your actions is no longer rooted in fear. It is rooted in calm strength. And when your inner dialogue consistently reflects the person you are striving to become, your actions gradually align with that identity until it is no longer something you practice. It becomes who you are. From the moment we are young, we are taught to look outward for signs that we are enough. We wait for approval from parents, teachers, friends, employers, and even strangers. A compliment makes us feel valuable. A criticism makes us question ourselves. Over time, many people unknowingly hand over the keys to their emotional state, allowing other people's opinions to determine their peace. This creates a fragile kind of confidence that rises with praise and collapses with rejection. The problem is not that appreciation feels good. The problem begins when you believe you cannot feel whole without it. For the next 3 days, observe how often your mood changes because of someone else's reaction. Notice the moments when you replay a conversation in your mind, wondering whether you said the right thing. Notice how much energy is spent imagining what others think about you. The truth is, most people are far more occupied with their own concerns than with judging your every move. Yet the mind creates stories where none exist. It imagines criticism, rejection, or disappointment, and then reacts as if those imagined events were facts. This habit quietly steals your peace. One of the strongest people in any room is often the one who feels no urgency to prove themselves. They do not constantly explain their choices or seek agreement before making decisions. Their confidence is not loud because it does not depend on applause. They understand that every person sees the world through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and expectations. Therefore, another person's opinion is often a reflection of their perspective rather than an objective measure of your worth. Ask yourself a simple question whenever you feel the need for approval. If no one praised me for this, would it still be the right thing to do? That question has remarkable power. It shifts your attention away from recognition and toward integrity. It reminds you that the value of your actions does not disappear simply because they go unnoticed. A tree does not stop growing because no one is watching it. The sun does not ask for permission before it rises each morning. Nature quietly fulfills its purpose without demanding acknowledgement. There is wisdom in that example. This does not mean you should ignore helpful feedback or isolate yourself from others. Wise advice can help you grow. Honest correction can reveal blind spots. The difference lies in whether you receive feedback as useful information or as a verdict on your identity. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. Learn to ask, what can I learn from these words? Instead of immediately asking, what do these words say about me? The first question leads to growth. The second often leads to unnecessary suffering. Another subtle trap is the desire to defend yourself against every misunderstanding. Not everyone will understand your intentions, and not everyone needs to. Trying to correct every false assumption is like trying to stop every wave from reaching the shore. It is endless work. Instead, let your character speak more consistently than your explanations. People may misunderstand your words for a moment, but over time they cannot ignore the steady evidence of your actions. Quiet consistency has a way of revealing the truth without argument. For these 3 days, practice giving yourself the approval you usually seek from others. At the end of each day, instead of asking whether people appreciated you, ask yourself, did I act according to my values? Did I respond with patience? Did I remain honest? Did I take one step forward? If the answer is yes, let that be enough. Allow your own respect to become more meaningful than temporary praise. This is not arrogance, it is emotional independence. There is a deep sense of freedom that comes when you no longer feel compelled to impress everyone around you. You begin speaking more honestly because you are no longer trying to craft the perfect image. You make decisions based on wisdom rather than popularity. You stop carrying the exhausting burden of trying to satisfy expectations that constantly change. Some people will approve of you, and others will not. That has always been true and always will be. Your peace cannot depend on something so unpredictable. As this practice becomes part of your life, you will notice a quiet strength emerging from within. Criticism will still reach your ears, but it will no longer settle so deeply in your heart. Praise will still feel pleasant, but you will no longer depend on it to believe in yourself. You will realize that your worth was never something another person had the authority to give or take away. It was something that became clear the moment you stopped searching for it in the opinions of others and started recognizing it in the quiet discipline of your own character. After 3 days of changing the way you speak to yourself, do not expect fireworks. Do not expect your life to become perfect overnight or every problem to disappear. Real transformation rarely announces itself with dramatic moments. Instead, it begins quietly. You may notice that your mind pauses before reacting. You may catch yourself replacing an old habit of self-criticism with a calmer response. You may realize that situations which once overwhelmed you no longer carry the same emotional weight. These are not small changes. They are signs that your inner foundation is becoming stronger. The purpose of these 3 days is not to become a different person. It is to remember the person you are beneath years of fear, doubt, and unnecessary judgment. Every negative belief that has repeated itself in your mind did not appear in a single day, and it will not disappear in one either. But 3 days are enough to interrupt the pattern. They are enough to prove that you are capable of directing your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. That realization alone changes everything. Begin each morning with a simple conversation before you reach for your phone or allow the outside world to influence your mood. Sit quietly for a moment and remind yourself, today, I will not believe every thought that enters my mind. I will choose calm over panic, patience over frustration, and progress over perfection. These words are not magical. Their power comes from repetition. Just as a river slowly shapes stone through constant movement, repeated thoughts slowly shape the architecture of your mind. As the day unfolds, challenges will naturally appear. Someone may criticize you. Plans may not go as expected. Old habits of worry may try to return. This is where your practice truly begins. Instead of reacting immediately, pause for a single breath. In that brief moment, ask yourself, what would the strongest version of me say right now? Not the loudest version, not the most aggressive, the strongest. Strength often speaks with remarkable simplicity. It says, stay calm. It says, handle what you can. It says, one step at a time. These few words have the power to prevent hours of unnecessary emotional suffering. By the evening, spend a few quiet minutes reflecting on your day. Do not search only for mistakes. Most people replay every failure while completely ignoring their moments of growth. Instead, ask yourself, where did I remain calm today? When did I choose patience instead of anger? What challenge did I face differently than before? Even if your answer is small, acknowledge it. Growth is built through recognition. When you notice your progress, your mind becomes more willing to repeat those behaviors tomorrow. You may still have moments where you fall back into old patterns. You may catch yourself speaking harshly or expecting the worst. Do not treat those moments as proof that nothing is changing. They are simply reminders that transformation is a process. Imagine planting a seed. You would never dig it up every morning to check whether it had grown. You trust the process because you understand that healthy roots develop beneath the surface long before anyone sees the first leaf. Your mind develops in the same way. Much of the most important work happens quietly, beyond what you can immediately measure. The greatest mistake people make is believing that motivation creates discipline. In reality, discipline creates motivation. The more consistently you practice healthy self-talk, the less effort it begins to require. What once felt unnatural gradually becomes your default response. Calm replaces chaos. Clarity replaces confusion. Confidence replaces constant self-doubt. Not because life has become easier, but because your mind has become steadier. Eventually, you reach a point where your inner voice no longer sounds like a critic waiting for you to fail. It becomes a trusted companion that reminds you of your strength during difficult moments. It does not promise that every path will be smooth. It simply reminds you that you have the ability to walk through whatever path appears before you. That quiet confidence is stronger than excitement because it remains even when emotions change. These 3 days are only the beginning. Continue the practice for a week, then a month, and eventually it becomes part of who you are. One day you will look back and realize that the greatest change was never in your circumstances. It was in the relationship you built with your own mind. You stopped treating yourself as an enemy and began treating yourself as someone worth guiding with patience, honesty, and respect. And in that moment, you discover a truth that many spend their entire lives searching for. Lasting peace does not come from controlling the world around you. It comes from mastering the voice within you. Because once that voice becomes calm, wise, and unwavering, very little outside of you has the power to disturb your inner peace.